So I just bought her a ticket, and she came as a tourist, and she stayed about 8 months. Stayed about 8 months. We had one child, and then she came home. But even at that, I loved the Army, and I was the a battalion honor guard. I was on that team for a long time. In fact, every unit that I got in, I ended up being on the honor guard.
How did it make you feel serving your country when you didn't have full citizenship?
I felt terrible. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. We were in Georgia, and I met this young man from Hollywood, California. And I had my car in Georgia, and we were getting ready to ship overseas for a month, and we were going to town to party. And he said, well, we'll all go with Norman. And he said, well, we can't go to town together. And this guy spoke up and said, he was at the other end of the barracks, he spoke up and said, you mean to tell me we are in this man's army, we are all citizens, and we can't go to town together? And he used some language that wasn't not credible. So anyway, we got over that, and we went to Germany. So I left Germany in 58, 59, and I often wonder what happened to this guy. Then I got a letter. I have a copy of the letter in 2010, I think. I got this letter. He was still looking for me, and I called him, and we had been talking about 5 minutes, and he said, you know, sir, I'll never understand. We were all American citizens in the same army, but we had to go to Germany before we could go to town together.
Wow.
That was really strong. That was just a couple of years ago.
What nationality was he?
Italian. Typical John Travolta. Yeah.
So it sounded like you had a lot of camaraderie in the military.
Yes. I've been very fortunate.
So when you were in Germany, could you go anywhere you wanted to go to eat, and the Germans?
Yeah, that's how we could go anywhere we wanted to eat. Now, Mary, we went to a pizza restaurant one night, and I'll never forget this. We went to this restaurant, and we went to sit down, and when Mary sat down, this guy grabbed his pizza and made some kind of funny noise and got up and moved. And come to find out, he was a GI. And it really hurt her, because the first time she had witnessed anything like that. But he was an American soldier.
But the Germans never made you feel any different?
No. We lived with the German family. We lived in a village, and the village we lived in, we were not only black, we were the only American in the village. And the family we lived with was wonderful. We rented from them something like $22 a month. We had a 2-room, flat. And it was a new house at the time. They hadn't been in the house too long. And there was, they had an in-law quarters, because the man who owned the house, his father was a prisoner during the Second World War, First World War. And he was, they lived there, but they were very nice. People in the village, and they were very nice.
What year did you come back to the United States?
59.
So now you've experienced some equality in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Now you come back to Virginia. What was the difference?
Well, I applied for a job in Fairfax County. And first I went to Roosevelt and took a course in boiler maintenance mechanic. And I was working, but I had been working at Luther Jackson as a custodian. And when I completed the course, I felt pretty good about it. And I applied for a job in Fairfax County at the school department, maintenance. And there was a guy with me, a young white guy, who applied at the same time. But they hired me as a custodian, and he gave him a apprentice job as, of course, his father worked at, he was one of the plumbers there also. But I didn't like that. Maybe I was kind of upset about that. And I went into the trucking business, the trash business. I got a trash truck. But when I went to the bank, my friend and I went to the bank. I was working at school, and he was working for one of the food stores. And when we went to the bank, actually we needed $10,000 to buy this truck. We both had jobs. And the guy at the bank, and there was another guy who went to the bank also, a white guy who went to the bank that we knew, and he was going into trash business also. Now, we needed $10,000 to get this truck. So we asked for 9, hoping to get 8. Well, we got up to somewhere around $750 or something like that, and bought this truck. Now, this guy talked to the same man, and he needed something like $12,000, and they showed him where he could get $18,000 because he had to pay himself while he worked when he first started. Now that stuck in my claw for a long time.
But then you got your business going.
I got my business going, yeah. So, because we had a job, I was working 2 ways,
Right.
I kept my main job because I worked at night, and I ran the business during the day.
So here the bank was definitely discriminating.
Yes.
So did you buy a home in Northern Virginia?
Yes, I bought a home in Vienna. Been on Sutton Road and lived there for 48 years.
What was it like trying to buy that house? Did you have discrimination?
No, we didn't have any discrimination on that.
Was it predominantly a African American community?
Oh yes. There was actually there was a black contractor from McLean who were building houses. A guy by the name of Blakely Weaver, and he was one of the houses that he had built, and he had built for assistant principal at Luther Jackson. Then he built another house, moved down the street to a bigger house, and we bought that house.
So blacks couldn't just move anywhere they wanted to in Fairfax?
No.
So they were just certain communities?
Certain communities, yeah.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, at the time, it didn't bother me too much. But as I got older, it really bothered me. I didn't like it.
Now, you talked about going to James Lee Elementary School, but it also served another purpose as you got older. It was used for some NAACP meetings.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about going to the school, being involved in those meetings?
Well, I never was really involved in other than just being a member. But I know that meetings were going on. I knew people, the older people, Reverend Shepherd and all those people who were involved with it. But as far as participating in records, I didn't do that. I was just a member.
What kind of fundraising things did they do there, do you know?
I really don't. I don't recall.
You said they wanted to get you to apply for
police.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there was a gentleman from Mount Pleasant who was really into the community work, did a lot of work in the community, getting people together and doing things. His name was Sidney Holland. He was a deacon at the church where and they thought that I was a good candidate for a policeman. The first, actually one of the first black police, that's what he was into. But I wasn't too big on that. I really didn't want to. I was pleased that they thought that much of me, But who would I jail? My friend. No, I didn't want that. I didn't like that.
So what church were you going to then when you were older?
Mount Pleasant.
Talk a little bit about the community as far as the churches and the ministers. What kind of activism was there for civil rights when you were coming
Well,
up?
they had meetings for organized, for civil rights, as far as getting people involved with the NAACP and things of that nature. I can't remember anything as far as fundraising. I don't remember anything like that. But I do know that they were active in getting people involved in the churches and so forth. There was always something mentioned in church service about the youth groups and so forth.
What are some of the leaders that you remember from that time period?
Reverend Milton Shepherd, Deacon Sidney Holland, Mrs. Eunice Wheeler, and there were Laura Duke and William Duke, Reverend Harold Smith, and Reverend Lewis from Bailey's Crossroads, Edward White was a family from there, and the Biglows.
Was Reverend Kenny Smith involved in that too?
No, he was a baby then.
He was a baby then. Okay. But he did drive look for Luther Jackson, right? True?
No.
No? Okay.
No. He, Reverend Smith came here about 25, 30 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that you had an opportunity to go to the March on Washington,
Yes.
the original March on Washington. Tell us about that, because that is an incredible experience.